All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a very special tribute episode of the Scoops podcast. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Gino. Say what's up, Gino.
What's going on, man? Thank you for having me.
No problem. It's a special tribute episode because it is the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's passing, 1 year since his passing. And you were one of the people I for sure wanted to talk to because you are a lifelong Celtic fan. And Celtic fans and Kobe Bryant and the Lakers have had a very tough rivalry. We've had many conversations about Kobe before and about what you think about Kobe. And we talked a lot when it came to his passing too, about how, you hated this guy because he was the main guy on your rival teams.
Exactly.
He was the main dude, but you had still had so much respect for how good he really was. And it
Yeah.
was just it was I'm doing this with a lot of different like Laker fans and Kobe fans, but I thought it'd be an interesting perspective to get from a Celtic fan. So
Yeah.
the first thing that I wanted to talk about, the first I wanted to mention was, or ask you, is what did Kobe Bryant, what did he mean to you as as a player? I'm sure that question means it has a different meaning now that he's passed. But what does what does Kobe mean to you?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. I mean, Kobe, especially in my lifetime, um, he represented the Lakers Celtic rivalry. But obviously on the Lakers side, growing up as a lifelong Celtics fan, we did not like the Lakers. And Kobe was always associated with the Lakers. So it was always kind of like, we don't like the Lakers, and Kobe, yeah, we don't like him either. Um, but I mean, growing up, the Lakers were so dominant, even with the Shaq era. Um, as a Celtics fan, we weren't very good in the early 2000s. Um, so there was a lot of animosity and kind of hate towards my side, which was warranted. I mean, it's a rivalry, but at the same time, you even mentioned it. Just I'm a basketball fan first, and then a Celtics fan. So to appreciate, Kobe's, mentality, um, what he represented to the sport. I mean, his hunger, his fuel to just go out every single day, whether it's a practice, whether it's a shoot around, whether it's a game, whoever's on the opposite side, whether it's the Celtics, whether it's the Spurs, um, he always kind of brought it to another level. Um, and like I said, as a basketball fan, I mean, regardless of what team he was on, regardless of who he was, as a basketball fan, you always appreciate that.
Exactly. What do you remember specifically about the day that he died? Like I remember on his actual passing, coaching a basketball game. You were coaching with me, right? Yeah, we were together. We
I
were
was with you.
together on the
Yeah.
day that Kobe died. That day was
Yeah.
such a blur. I don't remember who was around me. All I remember is, getting the news from the parents, which we did, and then getting it confirmed by so many people. And it was just, I don't remember the second half of that game. Like I don't remember coaching that day. I don't really remember a lot of what happened. That whole day was a fog, and it was one of the weirdest days of my life. How was it
Yeah.
for you?
We I believe we were notified at halftime.
Yeah.
So I don't know, obviously his death had occurred before that, but we I mean, we were obviously coaching at halftime. I remember one of the parents came and notified us.
Yep.
And it literally felt, man, like, because I'm guessing the parents and everybody that was watching, they're checking their phones and stuff. The news is coming in because it's halftime. They're not watching the game. And it literally felt, I mean, I don't know how many people were in the the gym, maybe 30. And it felt like the air was just completely sucked out of the gym. Like nobody was talking, nobody was, conversing about it. It was just dead quiet. Um, and I remember telling the kids, and the kids are small, so a lot of them don't even remember Kobe like in his prime. Um, but clearly telling them. I think you even said it. You're like, um, the whole kind of the environment went completely downhill. So we had to tell the kids like, hey, look, like let's pick up the pace, like let's kind of get our mind back on the game because we still have a game to finish. But you could tell, I mean, everybody's spirits after that, being notified. I mean, everybody was just kind of like their mind was focused on that. They weren't focused on the game or whatever else was going around. And then I remember after the game, I mean, it didn't, I think we won. It didn't even feel like a win. We walk out and you see everybody's faces and they're like, they're going crazy. They're like, like, what happened? Where was he at? What did he do? Blah, blah, blah. So, um, yeah, I mean, you could just really feel, man, like the life was kind of like sucked out of people that day, especially in Los Angeles too. Like that meant so much to the entire city. So, it was really, I mean, it really came as a shock.
The rest of the day was legit, just like it was a fog, like just everyone felt out of
denial,
it.
a lot of denial too. Like
Yeah,
immediately
and
we're
just
like,
an
no,
overall
this
sense
can't
of I
happen.
can't believe this happened. Like this
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense. It's a year
yeah,
later, and the thought of it still is hard to compute. Still is hard to think
exactly.
Kobe isn't here anymore. Like that's still such a weird statement.
And to the city of Los Angeles and especially Laker fans, like Kobe's a superhero. Like
Yeah,
Kobe wasn't supposed to die. Like Kobe was
Kobe's like
supposed to defy
Superman.
all odds. He wasn't supposed to die. So when you
Exactly.
hear, about his death and obviously how tragic it happened, it was something like, nah, like this isn't happening. This is not possible.
Yeah, it was a tough day. But like we did with the kids after the game, we tried to make such a terrible situation into a positive, and we told them to go look up Kobe, go watch his videos, go learn about him. You're gonna learn a lot of stuff from him. What is your favorite Kobe Bryant moment? And that's a tough question because there's so many Kobe Bryant moments out
Yeah.
there. So if you have more than one, you can say more than one, but try and narrow it down. What when you think of Kobe and all of his great moments, what's the first one that comes up and what's the most important to you?
Yeah, well, as a Celtics fan, my favorite Kobe Bryant moments were when he wasn't doing good. But when he did good, um, obviously, I mean, the 81 point game. I mean, that's,
Hmm.
I'm sure, that's top three for everybody, basketball fans included. Um, but honestly, I mean, if I had to pick a favorite, I would go with his last game. Um, I think it was against the Jazz. I think he
Yep.
dropped like 60.
Yep.
Um, that was another one of those moments, man, where it's like it felt like the atmosphere was obviously it was beyond game 7 finals atmosphere. Like the atmosphere was so electric. Um, and when that game ended, it literally felt like the game was kind of transitioning to a new era or something. Like it felt like something was changing with that, that transition from Kobe playing into retirement. um it I obviously I wasn't really around. The only way I could probably compare it to was when maybe Jordan announced his retirement to play baseball, like how much of a shock it came and like how really kind of the NBA had to adapt to life after,
Jordan.
Jordan,
Hmm.
and with Kobe, obviously he wasn't at his best, at his prime, but still, I mean, he had dominated for so long, and now he's gone. It's like, wait, the change kind of happened too drastically. It seems so crazy, and especially for that last game. Um, I mean, he went off the entire game. Um, it was like it was one of those send offs where it's like this is exactly how you draw it up. Whether it's in
Yeah.
a book or a movie, like this is exactly how it's supposed to play out. And then once it ended, People are crying, people are celebrating. It's just one of those things where there's so many emotions. Um, and then the day after you kind of, it's one of those, it's like when your team wins the finals, it's like the day after you're like, oh my God, like that happened. But with Kobe, it was like, oh, like he's actually like he's done. Like I'm not seeing Kobe play anymore. Like, so it was a lot of like mixed feelings, and I feel like that as a Celtic fan, like watching Kobe throughout the years, it was a lot of mixed feelings. You loved seeing him play well, but at the same time, when he was going up against my team, there was no way I wanted him to do well.
Yeah. And like you said, knowing that that was the last time we were going to see Kobe, and it was kind of a transition to basketball without him. The end of the game where you see that image of D'Angelo Russell and Julius Randle and all the young guys that were learning so much from him, with him being on the team, hugging him and huddling with him and celebrating. It was a very, the new generation was coming in and kind of ushering Kobe out the door, as it was their turn to be the new stars of the league.
Yeah, like the passing of the torch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I
yeah.
think that's another, I guess another reason why Kobe was kind of so important was, you know he obviously he was on some very great teams, some of the best teams of all time. But he was on some pretty bad teams as well, especially at the tail end of his career. Um, and there was rumors and stuff, but what we saw, Kobe never complained. Um, he, no matter who was suiting up with him, whoever was on the court, he was going to get the best out of them. Um, and especially, like I said, at the tail end when he had a lot of those young guys. I mean, as a mentor, like Kobe's got to be up there in the top five who you want as a mentor, just from his mentality to his skill level. I mean, there's not many that I would put above him. So
I
so
feel
yeah,
like I feel like teammate Kobe is pretty scary to play with, especially when it comes to practices and stuff like that. Like if you're not
yeah,
on your game, you're gonna hear
hmm,
about it from that guy. I feel like retired Kobe that was like training with Giannis and Tatum, he was probably a little more lighthearted and a little more,
yeah.
but yeah, teammate Kobe, he was gonna get the best out of you. He was going
Teammate
to.
Kobe, it's like you hear the stories of like this guy, I showed up early at the gym and this guy was already there like 3 hours prior. I feel like Kobe, like he never left the gym. He was one of those guys that like he's one of those guys where like you hear a story later down the line where like he had a sleeping bag in like the back area of the gym and like he slept there and then he came to practice. So I mean, with him, it was like, you
Have you
know,
seen that picture of him shooting with his left hand in like a hospital gown, like after I forget what?
no,
Yeah, like he had surgery or something on his right hand, and he was just shooting left-handed jumpers.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. That sounds exactly like something he would do.
And then yeah, when I think of Kobe, I think of and the him being a teammate and a mentor and getting the best out of his team and stuff like that. I think of the time Luke Walton showed up hungover, and Kobe went out in the entire game or the entire practice, and was just on him for it. And that the very famous video clip that came out of him jawing at his teammates, at like Nick Young and guys like that, and at GMs and the people that were on the sidelines, the management, and like these are the scrubs that you're giving me to work with and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
that's who Kobe was. Kobe demanded as close to perfection as you could get.
I mean, we heard stories. We heard a couple of stories about like obviously him and Dwight Howard's relationship wasn't the best. Um, and kind of Dwight kind of came to the Lakers, and I feel like at that time Dwight was kind of like on this, this high level.
Hmm.
Um, and Kobe, again, no matter who you were, no matter what your name was, if you didn't fight for your spot, if you didn't come bring your A game 100%, regardless of the situation, he was going to chew you out. And I feel like that, that was kind of reflected in that Dwight situation.
Yep. That was those were two guys that they didn't mesh well, and just personality wise, it was like him and Shaq on steroids. Like
Yeah.
it was yeah. But
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy too, and I think the reason why the Shaq thing worked out for so long is because of how dominant they were.
because
Like,
how
if
dominant
you're
Shaq
winning
was.
championships, all right, we can put our little personal beefs aside or whatever. We clash or whatever, but let's put it aside. Let's win these rings.
Hmm.
And I think with the Dwight situation, if they would have won rings, I feel like it would have been the same thing. Like, let's just turn the other cheek, but once we get on the floor, it's all business.
Yep. Um, and the picture I was talking about earlier of him shooting with his left hand, he wasn't in a hospital gown. He was in his pajamas though. He was in his pajamas and like a yellow like practice jersey, and his right hand is like casted, and he's just you see him just shooting with his left hand.
Crazy.
That was Kobe Bryant.
Yep.
If there was a that's like got to be a top five summarized Kobe Bryant in a picture type of picture taken right there.
Yeah. That and like the Pau Gasol story about the Olympics. Have you heard about that one? The Pau
Tell
Gasol
me,
where they beat. I think they beat. That was the year they beat Spain. I don't remember the year, but they beat Spain,
probably 12.
and yeah, around there. Or no, I think it was '08,
Yeah. Oh wait. Okay.
and I believe they beat Spain in the finals, and then that next year, Kobe, I think it's a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but he put his gold medal in like Pau's locker, in his Laker locker, to like kind of rile Pau up. Um, and Pau called him out. You're an asshole. Blah 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 blah. And then that year they end up going and they end up winning. So um, that was kind of that's another story that kind of represents him. No matter what he's gonna do, no matter what the situation, he's gonna do whatever he has to do to get the best out of you, whether it angers you, whether it cheers you up, whatnot. Um, and that was another one of those situations.
So my next question is, if you had to describe Kobe to a non-basketball fan, like, or maybe a new basketball fan, maybe like a kid or just someone that's just starting to get into basketball or whatever, and you had to describe Kobe to them, how would you do it?
Oof. Um, I mean, I think the first word that comes to most people's minds is the mentality. Um, I think Kobe. There's 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 a rare breed of really just athletes, but especially in the basketball world where they come with this mentality. It just feels like they play the game for a different reason than a lot of the players play. A lot of the players play for money or fame, whatnot, and then if they win a ring, okay, that's a positive. With Kobe, it's like no. Number one was I got to be successful no matter what.
I got to be the
Um,
best.
exactly. So all of that other stuff, that comes later, or that just comes with the territory. If I'm the best, that's going to line up endorsement deals. That's going to line up, money, shoe deals, whatever. Um, how you get to that point is through hard work. It's the mentality, it's the grind, it's the dedication to your craft to get better every single day. Um, there's, I mean, years where Kobe won MVPs. He was the best player in the world, and you know, I don't think that ever kind of changed his mentality. He knew, okay, even though I'm the best, okay, tomorrow I got to get a little bit better, and then I got to get a little bit better, and then a little bit better. So, um, explaining that to kids, especially, I think that's extremely important if they're playing basketball for their growth. Um, just because it's so easy to get complacent, especially as a kid. Um, so to know that like even though you may be the best in your team or the best at your school, in the grand scheme of it all, that doesn't mean anything if you're not continually improving. So
Exactly.
that I think, yeah. So the mentality and just his determination to be better, I think that pretty much describes him to a T.
It's so easy in anything that you do, whether it's sports or whatever, to just think, you know what, I'm good enough. Like I'm good enough to get that. I'm good enough to get that. Like yeah, I'm okay. But Kobe was like, no, I'm never good enough. It's never enough. I need to keep going.
And it says so much about a person when you could be making millions and millions of dollars. You can be on billboards. I mean, Kobe was a global icon. You know, it goes maybe Jordan and Kobe in terms of global appeal. Um, you know, you hear about like the people in like Japan, how they like obsess over Kobe, and it's like, you would only imagine every person would be like, once they get to that point, okay, I can kind of settle down a little bit. I got the money, I got my shoes, I got the rings. But with him, it was like, nah, like that was not enough. That wasn't enough.
Yeah,
So that's like I said earlier. I mean, there's a rare breed of individuals who have that mentality to continue to get better. Um, and he was definitely one of them.
for sure. Um, a couple small, a couple small scenario-ish Kobe questions.
Okay.
This one is another really like hard, next to impossible question to answer. But
Okay.
which Kobe was the better Kobe, number 8 or number 24? And you can answer that as preference. You can answer that as who you think is factually like better. You can answer that as who I would take on my team. But 8 or 24 when it comes down to it.
I think personally, I think 24 was better. I think he was the much wiser player. I think in terms of fundamentally, I think he was the better player. I think 8, when I look at highlights, it seems like 8 is the one that kind of explodes off the tape. You
Mm-hmm.
saw a little bit more of the explosiveness in 8. When he had the little afro, like you see 8 and you're like, okay, like, he's going to do something crazy. Um, 24, it's like 24, it seems like the mature, like, I'm not talking anymore, but I'm going to get under your skin. I'm going to drop 50 if you talk to me. But, if not, I'll drop a slight 35 or something
Mm-hmm.
consistently. But 8, I think 8 was probably the more appealing to watch. Um, but I think 24, I think was overall. I mean, those early years of 24, I feel like he had it all. He had the entire package, the explosiveness, the mentality was still there. I mean, I think he had fundamentally, I think he was at his prime. I think that was the entire package.
I heard someone say 8 if you want to have fun, 24 if you want to win the game.
Yeah, perfect. I wish
But
I could have used that as my answer. Yep.
remember, towards the end of 8 is when he got 81. Towards the end of 8 is when he was going on crazy scoring tears, just unbelievable. 8 has more championships than 24,
Hmm.
3-2.
Right.
So there is an argument for 8, but I feel like the majority of people are gonna say 24 regardless.
Yeah, because I think 24, and you also got to think like the generation that we kind of grew up in. Um, the early parts of 8, they were still kind of like shaky. Obviously, we know about the three-peat and stuff. Um, but once that 8 turned to 24, that was when, like you said, he kind of kicked it up another notch in terms of like individual numbers and individual performances. And that's when I guess we can say kind of his prime was really starting to start. Even when 8, people can debate, who was better on that team, Shaq or Kobe. 24, it was undeniable. Kobe was the best player on every team. Um, and he, I mean, I like you said, I think 24. You want to win the game, you go with 24. 8 just to me was like there's a little bit more nostalgia with 8. um Even with like the slam dunk contests and stuff, like like 8. um he's just 8 means a little something different than 24. But I like I said, I think 24 is if you want the overall Kobe experience, the entire Kobe package, you gotta go with 24.
Yeah, they each have their cons too, though. 8 was, Kobe's growing pains. 24 was,
Exactly.
the end of Kobe's, like the tail end of his career. Just all the losing teams that they really had.
And the injuries and stuff. I
The
mean,
injuries
you
too.
hate to
Yeah,
see him suffer through the injuries, but I mean, he kept fighting. But yeah, I mean, they definitely have their pros and their cons.
yeah. Something I've talked about with my dad a lot. It
Hmm.
was around. It was when Kobe, towards the tail end of his career, when he was having his injuries and the Lakers weren't doing well. He couldn't understand why the Lakers were paying him so much money when it felt like he was producing so little on the court. Like, he didn't understand. He didn't see Kobe as worth all that. And I mean, from the outside looking in, you can see why. But when you're a basketball fan or when you're a Laker fan, Kobe could ask for the entire salary and leave us with a Chris Mim and Vladimir Radmanovich and at 40 years old, and we'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you give him more. You give him more than what he asked for.
It's like it was like what Dallas and Dirk had somewhat, but Dirk did take a lot of pay cuts, so it was a little different. But I mean, Kobe provides, well, always has provided a lot of intangibles, even when he wasn't playing on the court. But I mean, the city of LA was and will always be forever in his gratitude.
Yeah, and
We'll
I
be
mean
grateful
the
for him.
Laker franchise, like Kobe represents the Lakers. So
Hmm.
if they let him go because of money, it just seems like it puts a bad taste in everybody's mouth, knowing what he represents to not only the team but the sport and his abilities as a player. Even if he's not playing, like you said, you give him the money and you what he offers off the court um, to his teammates and the wisdom he provides, that alone I feel is worth the money. So it's
You
almost like
make
you're getting a
do.
coach and a player for
Yeah.
the money for the same price. I mean, you give it to him.
Yeah, you make do with what comes, after that you're not giving him. And I mean,
Yeah,
it would just, they would have had a problem if they didn't, you know, if they did something like that, if they did Kobe dirty in whatever way, they like Lakers management would legit have a problem on their hands from Laker fans and basketball fans alike.
right. Yeah,
More, I feel like more people would be upset than people would understand it. There'd be people
yeah.
that understand, they'd be like, oh yeah, there was no reason to pay him, but there'd be more people that'd be upset about it.
Because Kobe also represented like that. I mean, you're seeing kind of like the tail end of it now. I mean, especially with the Harden trade that just happened. Kobe, like, I mean, I mentioned this earlier. Kobe, whoever was on his team, Kobe was gonna fight because he represented the franchise. So for the franchise to kind of let him go, it's kind of there's that disconnect of, okay, I'm fighting for you, but you're not willing to fight for me. That's not going to work. And you're seeing a lot of that in the league now, where it's like, okay, let's request the trade here, let's go here. The money's good over here. Um, but Kobe was always, he seemed like he was always kind of team first. Um, I think that's a common misconception just because of Kobe's playing style. How he was the very flashy player. Individually his numbers were insane, but at the end of the day, the guy is a winner. And what he brought to locker rooms, what he brought to franchises was more than just those individual awards or accolades. So yeah, I mean, we you don't see that a lot nowadays. So um, for for the Lakers to kind of give him that money and to treat him like, no matter what happens, no matter what injuries you go through, however you produce, you're gonna stick with us and we're gonna stick by you. So
Yeah. And the last question being, what would you rather have seen more? Would you rather have seen Kobe play against LeBron in the finals, or would you have rather seen the Chris Paul trade go through and Kobe play with Chris Paul on that team?
if the Chris Paul trade went through, I mean, looking back at that, I mean, that was uh, as a Laker, as a Celtic fan, obviously I didn't want that, but I mean, as a Laker fan that you are, I mean, I look back at that now and I look like that. I mean, that is so disastrous, so messed up, considering what's happening in the league now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if that trade would have went through, man, like, I mean, again, as a Celtic fan, I didn't want it to happen. But as a basketball fan, seeing the Chris Paul trade go through, like, I think that easily would have been one of the best teams of all time. Um, just because like I'm a huge Chris Paul fan. Um, I love the way he plays the game, and I feel like him and Kobe styles would match up so perfectly. Um, Chris Paul, I think, is a little bit of a hothead, and Kobe we know is so. That dynamic of them playing together, it would have been interesting to see if they could make it work. I'm sure they would. Um,
They would have
so
brought some great basketball out of each other.
yeah,
They would have just
yeah.
drawn it out of each other.
I mean, that's like that to me is like it's like yin and yang. When you have, the facilitator who, can score from anywhere on the court, but at the same time, he's going to give you the pass right where you need it. And you have Kobe, who is, I mean, one of the all-time scorers from anywhere on the court.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that would have been so explosive. I would probably go with that. I would have liked to see a little bit of LeBron, Kobe in the finals. Um, but again, I think sizing wise, I think Kobe would have took the challenge. He don't care how big LeBron is or what position he's playing. He wants him. Um, but I don't know. I think just stylistically, LeBron and Kobe were kind of different. I think people wanted to see that more because it was kind of the changing of the guard. We knew LeBron was going to be the next guy. So we wanted LeBron to kind of prove your worth against the best guy now.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I don't know. I don't find like even like the LeBron and KD kind of like forced rivalry and stuff. I don't really look towards that. Um, I look more towards like, okay, who is this team putting together? Who is this team putting together? How are they matching up as a whole? So I would probably go with to answer your question, the CP3 trade. Even though
Surprising that you'd want exactly. It's surprising you'd want to see
I would have never watched basketball. We
You would
wouldn't
have
be
been
talking about it.
you would have been one of the first people that I talked to if that trade went through. Just be like, look at that. Look who we got.
I remember when the trade was it like went through. And I was thinking to myself, like, this is so unfair. Like, I'm pissed. I'm like, I'm not watching basketball. I'm giving it up. I hate it. And then when it got vetoed or whatever, I was like, oh, okay, like, I like basketball again. Let me watch the game tonight.
Oh man.
But yeah, I mean, as a Celtic fan, yeah, like that wasn't even like there's no way. There's no way I would have liked that. I mean, I see them winning at least 2 rings. Obviously, like we said, if they made it work, I'm sure they would have found a way to make it work. But I mean, both of those guys at their prime, that would have been insane.
Definitely. All right. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much summed it up, but I think it's like you mentioned earlier, it's cool to kind of get a Celtics fan's perspective on this whole thing. When we were coaching, I believe the day he passed, I told the kids this, and it's just a little funny thing that I tell everybody. When I was growing up, when you're growing up as a kid, everybody tells you don't look under the bed or don't look in the closet, like, because the boogeyman's in there, the monster's in there. As a Celtic fan growing up, there was no boogeyman, there was no monster. It was Kobe Bryant. Like, Kobe Bryant was under my bed. I didn't want to look under the bed because Kobe Bryant was there. Like, that's how scared we were of him, and matching up against him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just, to look back now, a year after his passing, it speaks volumes, the fact that I can sit here as a Celtics fan and say, hey, look, like, I remember the battles. I remember the hell he put me through as a fan. But at the end of the day, like as a basketball fan, like you can only respect the guy and what he brought and what he represents, not only as a basketball player but as a human being. So, and I know a lot of people, Celtics fans or not even Lakers fans. I know they have they share the same exact sentiment as me. So, like I said, I think that just speaks volumes of the guy he was.
Yeah. Um, he's as when you talk about him, like it's you can kind of feel that excitement from that the stuff you're talking about. It's like that excitement comes back, and there's so many different like exciting times about Kobe that you could talk about, and he's so much fun to talk about, but at the same time you're reminded, like, it's sad because he's not here anymore, and it's 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 a tough subject to talk about, and it's not any less weird now than it was the first day that it happened.
Absolutely.
It's still just as strange not having Kobe be here.
Yeah. And I mean, as we spoke about it before, just the Celtics Lakers rivalry. I mean, Kobe, he represents so much, but you add on to the fact that, hey, look, I'm a Celtics fan, you're a Laker fan, and we live in LA. Like, that adds it adds another element to the whole, the excitement factor that he brought. Going back to, '08 and 2010, like, those immediately, like, I think of those moments and, those finals and, the game 7 and stuff, like those things, like, basketball fans, obviously they can appreciate it, but when you're a Laker fan or when you're a Celtic fan or when you're a Kobe fan or a Paul Pierce fan, whatever, that's where you kind of like I said, you kind of get that little extra gratification looking back on everything. So, yeah, I mean, he represented so much, man, and like, um, it's, I mean, like you said, it's still tragic. A year gone from his passing, and it's, I mean, we mentioned it. It seems like unbelievable. We're still kind of in denial. It's like, wait, he can't be gone. Like, this isn't possible. So,
Exactly.
um, you can't say that about a lot of people. Um, but Kobe, I mean, in recent years, I mean, he's been the one that, like, I feel like really impacted everybody, not even just the city of LA. So it's been
Yeah.
crazy.
Everyone enjoyed watching retirement Kobe. Whether you were a Laker fan, a Celtic fan, it didn't matter. It was nice to see him. Whether you were rooting for him on the court or whether you weren't rooting for him on the court. So yeah,
Exactly.
tragic loss, but
Yep.
still so much to talk about. And he'll always be one of those people that you can talk forever about.
And I mean, there's like that's the good point about, he was in the era where, I'm sure you could probably find every Kobe game online. So
Mm-hmm.
just to see, I mean, he's had millions and millions of amazing moments. Um, we really kind of, I mean, his spirit and his legacy is obviously gonna be, it's gonna be known forever. But at the same time, like, I feel like everybody kind of needs to, like, remember those moments, relive them, watch highlights, watch the clips, watch the finals games again, just to really kind of capture, um, what Kobe, what Kobe meant to the sport and, to his teams.
Yep. He's whether you have him as like a top 10 basketball player of all time or not, and a lot of people do, but whether you do or
Yeah,
not, he is a lot of people's personal favorites for sure.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining me and for talking to me
Thank
about
you,
Kobe.
man. Nah, it's been fun.
Yeah. All right. Well,
But a lot of bad memories, but it's been fun. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks, man.
Thank you.